I've kind of created a process, I've kind of formulated a framework for how to build great products that I call the 4 Ds that I want to share with you. So the first D is discover, the second D is define, the third is design, and the fourth is develop. And this is just a way to organize the phases of the process to answer the key questions in each of those phases in order to build a great product. So in the discover phase, the main questions are who's our customer and what are their needs? That's what we're trying to figure out in the discover phase. In the define phase, and sometimes people munge define and design together. I like to be a little more specific. You'll see that in a sec too. In the define phase, we're really saying, how do we plan to meet their needs, and how are we going to be better than the other products that are out there? That's the key thing about define, is figuring that out, which then leads into what should our feature set be? What should our functionality be in order to convey those needs, right? And then in the design phase, that's where we explore what is the best solution approach, right, to how to deliver those features to meet those needs. We think about the user experience, and we work through the design details. I have a framework that's 50% better than the double diamond. It's the triple diamond. You heard it here first. And the reason why is I like to break the solutions down. Again, solutions kind of munges, in my mind, things together, like what is the functionality that we're going to build versus what the actual design is. And I think this can help provide clarity, and that's how I think about the process, basically. And so I'm going to walk you through this. And what we can talk about, I mean, the bottom line is now we can get into, well, who's doing what between product management and UX, right? And one of the things I'll say out of the bat is anytime I work with a lot of teams, anytime I hear a team saying, oh, that's my job, don't cross that line, you're crossing my line, you're getting in my swim lane or whatever, right? That's a little yellow flag for me. So the reality is we're working together through both the UX and PM should be collaborating throughout. The only question is kind of who's driving more, who should be driving more, who is typically driving more is what I should say. Because in any given team, depending on what's going on, different people can wear different hats. So I'm about to show you like who tends to be the primary person versus secondary, but don't take that to mean like a strict first and second. It's just more like kind of who, at the end of the day, by default, who should be driving that phase, all right? And I want to explain it, the difference between problem space versus solution space. So problem space is a customer problem, need, or benefit that the product should address. And if you know the template for a well-written user story, as a blank, I want a blank so I can blank, that last part, so I can blank, that's the essence of the problem statement and the requirement, right? Well, how is this going to create value for the customer? In contrast, solution space is a specific implementation or design to address the need or requirement. That's the difference, right? So just to illustrate this, if I said, hey, you know, I want to create a way, I want to make it easier to share photos with your friends. That statement, make it easier to share photos with your friends, that would be in the problem space. It's devoid of any specific design or implementation or solution. If the next thing I said is, oh, and over the last year, I've been working on an app that makes it easy to share photos with your friends, that app would be in the solution space. Or if I said my friend, Julie is an awesome designer, and she created a set of mock-ups. I haven't built it yet, but she gave me the mock-ups for the app. That set of mock-ups would be in the solution space. So that's the idea. And this is where we diverge on designs. And I could actually spend a lot of time on this. We have a lot of designers in the room, so I won't get into too much. But you know, for any given feature, if I say, hey, let's build an address book importer, or let's build a photo sharing feature, you all know there's millions of different ways that we could design that feature. That's why I actually like to lock down on the feature before we then go, what are all the different ways we can do it? You know, variations of conceptual design, information architecture, how you're organizing it, the interaction design. The visual design has a million different ways, right? Different color palettes, different fonts. There's a million things you could do. Visual hierarchy, everything, right? And so this is a critical role. This is, again, where the baton gets passed. The designer's been involved the whole time, but now the baton gets passed. Say, okay, now that our team's got clarity on the problems we want to solve and the features we think are critical for V1 or the next version, now designer, help us explore the solution space and figure out what's possible. And again, I like to diverge, not just come up with one design, but and you don't want to do 1,000. You don't have time to do that, obviously. Let's be pragmatic about it, but kind of say, hey, let's explore 2, 3 fundamentally different directions, right? And you might go down and mock those up and actually test those with people. And then what an interesting thing that happens is you might find that people like A and B from this concept, they like D and E from this concept. And so then you start crossing over and hybriding the things in the next iteration. And that's how you really end up with really great products by doing that. But that's a critical role that the designer basically plays in the process. And so it's about like a 10-page prototype, right? in InVision, and I moderated people through the thing. And what did we learn? There were a lot of questions and concerns. It didn't really go particularly well. So here's that same chart now, color-coded with red, yellow, green. Now, green doesn't mean slam dunk, ship it. Green means, well, there were questions and concerns, but we feel like we have a good enough handle on it that if we address them, there's an opportunity to create customer value there. Yellow meant low appeal. Red meant no appeal. So not surprisingly, social networking, that was just bolted on, did not test well, right? The first thing is, when you do this, do you get any green? There's no guarantee you're going to get any green. So luckily, we got some green. But did we get green in the main idea that we were going after in the first place? We didn't get any at all, right? And so it's interesting. This happens all the time. If you go out there with a certain idea and customers go, that's not really that important. But let me tell you about this adjacent thing that is important. That happens. It's pivoting. Happens all the time. So we did find some green. Here we found an island of green in that concept and an island of green here. The other thing I'm just as proud of is the red, right? Does anyone here know what a marketing score is? I don't, and I worked on the project. But I know it would have taken a lot of money to buy the third-party data feed that we would need to get the data, a lot of engineer salaries to create the algorithm, and a lot of money to educate the market on why they should care. But guess what? Because people didn't have any appeal for people, we can cut that. So it's just as important to cut the non-valuable stuff as it is to find the valuable stuff, right?